2024 presidential election is fewer than 2 weeks away, and we're all holding our collective breaths. I personally haven't slept since June. Here to give us his perspective on the neck-and-neck race between the candidate and the conspiracy theorist is former New Jersey governor and ABC News political contributor, Christie. Welcome back. So, Chris, before we get into anything else, I want to know if you have anything to say about our conversation. Do you want to weigh in on it?
Well, I thought the screw you thing was great Jersey way to end the segment.
Well, that's...
that was
Brooklyn.
really good.
That's Brooklyn.
You know, we're going to adopt her for that one. No, look, I do think that the coverage that you were talking about, I think the reason for it is he's numbed us.
Yeah. He's numbed us.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 9 years of relentless lowering and lowering of the bar, and after a while, everybody becomes numb, and most particularly the people who spend a lot of their lives on this. You know, a lot of the American people kind of dodge in and out of political conversation, but for people like all of you sitting around this table, like me, who do this for a living, you've been relentlessly hit with his language for all that time.
Should they have at least fact-checked along the way? Because all of these lies have accumulated since he came down on that escalator.
Look, as a matter of ethics, yes, but I will say that the fact-checking that goes on at times helps him, because for those people who feel aggrieved, they feel like, oh, well, they're just picking on him. And I think the last thing we need to do in these last 10 days is to make him more of a martyr than he is already. And so,
by not fact-checking him? His supporters.
But I mean, I think that at this point, the people who know that he's a liar, they've already made up their minds. You know, they've made up their minds of where they're going to vote. The people who don't believe, or actually do believe everything that he says, you're not going to change their minds either.
What about those undecideds?
Those undecideds, I really don't believe the undecideds are making the decision on Donald Trump.
There's people, Chris, who have Trump amnesia, that have forgotten, because for 4 years we've had a decent man and a decent woman as his vice president in the White House who don't talk this way, who don't say these things. And I think that some people have forgotten. To me, it's important to remind them, because for some people, it does matter.
I just don't think those people are going to vote, Anna.
What about
if
voters?
they have that kind of
young people.
amnesia, they're not going to vote. And for the first time,
I
voters...
would have liked to forget him.
Yeah, I think that what's going on here is it's all up to Vice President Harris. The people who have, at this point, 10 days out, not already decided they're voting for Trump, they're not voting for Trump.
Yeah.
They're either voting for Harris or they're not voting.
Well,
And so, for me, that's why I think that what the Vice President's doing now should be focused exclusively on closing the deal about why she would be the best president. Saying that, you know, Donald Trump is awful and a fascist and all the rest of that, I don't disagree with any of it. But those people are already sold. So if you believe that, they're sold. It's done.
So who do you think is going to win? Who's going to win?
Look, 10 days ago, I would have told you that she's going to win.
And now?
And I think she's had a bad 10 days.
Why?
Because I don't think there's advantage and disadvantage to having come in the race as late as she did. The advantage is she didn't have to go through all the primaries and go through all of that goes on that wears you down a bit. But the disadvantage is people don't know her. I mean, yes, look.
She's been the vice president for almost 4 years.
You know,
How could they not
Sonny,
know
you
her?
know the old joke. A woman had 2 sons.
Yes.
One went to sea, the other became vice president of the United States. Neither were ever heard from again. I mean, the job of the vice president is to stand 3 steps behind the president, out of focus.
Well, then
they didn't know.
Then why did they keep accusing her of not doing anything when she was vice president? What did Mike Pence do, I'd like to know?
Nothing. Like, look. But see, I think that's part of. I think that's part of the problem too with the vice president. I think one of the things that she needs to say when they're blaming her for certain things that were the president's decision.
Right.
I had a lieutenant governor. I got to tell you, most of the time I didn't ask her, like, "Are you think I'm right on this or not?" I mean, she gave her input. I made a decision. It's my decision, not hers.
Right. Yep.
So I think Vice President Harris should say, and she didn't say it here. I watched you guys that day. When you asked her, you know, what would you do different than Biden? She didn't say it. I gotta believe there are things she disagreed with him on. You're human beings. You're gonna have.
Well, they've had
she's a bright woman with a mind of her own. She's clearly gonna have times where she looked at President Biden and said,
They've
I
had a
wouldn't do
successful
that.
administration, though, and she's not going to throw him under the bus. But
there's a difference, though, Sonny, between throwing somebody under the bus and saying, I had an honest disagreement with him on X, whatever it is. Because you can have an honest disagreement with someone you have enormous respect for.
Why not just say something?
Compared to the other side, that's nothing.
But the point is, you've got these undecided voters, right? I don't count you as one of them. You have these undecided voters, right?
I hope you're not one of the undecided
No,
voters.
look, these undecided voters have to make their decision, and it's not going to be on whether they hate Trump enough. It's going to be, if they're undecided, that means they don't want Trump. They've known him for 9 years. So they're trying to decide, can I count on her
So
or not?
you're saying they're leaning towards Kamala?
Let me
I
ask,
think by
they're open to Kamala.
definition, they're open to her. She's got to close the deal. And that's why I think, even now, 10 days out, it's too early to say someone or the other is going to
Listen,
win.
there's a lot of-
Those late breakers are
Let me ask you
usually the
about
ones that go
strategy, though.
to
Let me
the
ask you about
challenger.
strategy, because
Yeah.
she was in Georgia last night. She's got to win Georgia, right? We saw President Obama on stage with the vice president. Bruce Springsteen was there, Spike Lee, Sam Jackson, Tyler Perry. I mean, it was star-studded. Get out the vote. Vote for the vice president. It seemed to really, though, be the strategy was, this is a fight for our future. And she was honing in on what an untethered Trump presidency would look like. With Georgia being this sort of must-win state, you're saying, though, that's not the right strategy. She should talk more about her policies?
Yeah, I don't think it's the right strategy. I think if 9 years in, you're still undecided about Donald Trump, you know, like,
Exactly.
what else are you going to hear? Like, what is, with all due respect to her, what is she going to tell me in the last 10 days? Somebody's going, oh, I didn't know that about Trump. Oh, heck, now I'm not going to vote for him. That's not it. She's got to close the deal for her because she's a lesser-known quantity. And you said, well, people knew Joe Biden. Yeah, but Joe Biden's been in office for 50
Governor,
years.
Governor,
hasn't.
But she's been putting out her policy ideas. He has a concept of a plan. Don't they hear that?
Well, and obviously, I think some do. And I think her job is to say now, what is her presidency really going to be?
She has 8
And the other
pages
night on CNN.
on a website.
Like, look, and yes, but most people aren't going to go and look at that, Sonny. You know that.
I looked at
it's
it.
going to be, well, you're not most people.
We're doing here what Charlemagne the God was talking about yesterday. We are holding her to this high standard of her closing message needs to be this and this and this and that. His closing message is Arnold Palmer's package.
Right.
Yeah.
Dancing for 39 minutes like a
was
wacko
generals.
job.
It was generals.
And that's-
Making fries at McDonald's. So why don't you tell him something? Why don't we talk about his closing message? What do you think about that?
What I think about that is that he is who he's always been, and he's not going to gain any voters in these last 10 days.
That's the point. I mean,
But
you don't want to talk about his.
No.
You're spending all this time
Something I don't want to talk
criticizing
about it.
Kamala.
I'm not criticizing.
Sounds like criticism
Let's
to
be
me.
clear,
She just
Anna.
asked a
Well, then you
question.
got to open your ears. What I'm saying is trying to give her suggestions on how I think she can close the deal.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
Well, and
the bottom line is I'm not here to be a cheerleader for her. I'm here to say, based on what I've learned in politics over time, what she needs to do to close the deal. She's got an opportunity to go up. I don't think he does.
Okay, but Republicans who are having a hard time, right, closing the voting for her. You think hearing, and I'm talking about national security Republicans who care about the military. You think hearing John Kelly say that he is a fascist and that what he said about Hitler doesn't make a difference to those Republicans?
I don't think. I think those Republicans have already figured out
I don't
that
think
they
so.
don't like him, or else they're Republicans. They'd be voting for him. What they're trying to figure out is, okay, I don't want to vote for him. Am I going to vote for her or vote for no one?
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to figure out. Because those undecided voters
and you
who
think
don't close
hearing,
her...
you think hearing from John Kelly doesn't help them
No,
make a
no.
decision?
I think hearing from her about, and I thought one of the things she did on CNN last
That's my
couple of nights
question,
ago
is actually-
that was really good was when she started to say, I'm going to be practical.
Yep.
I want to get things done. I'm going to have a to-do list. He's going to have
Yes,
an enemies
yes,
list.
that was a great
Like,
line.
that's what people want to hear. They want to hear that government's going to stop being this perpetual argument,
Yep.
and it's going to be something that's going to move forward issues that you care about. If she can convince people that she's not going to be a partisan Democrat, but she's going to be a president for everybody, even the people who didn't vote for her.
and collaborate and have people in. Because that's what I was going to say is that during the town hall on CNN, there were mixed reviews. There were people that felt she wasn't clear on the border wall, taxes, the Middle East. There were people that felt she kind of walked the line. So what do you think that she's doing is landing with people, and what is like missing the mark?
The collaboration, practicality is landing with people, especially with undecided voters. I think that means a lot to them. And look, on the border wall thing, I think there was an obvious answer to give, and which she didn't give, which is, yeah, I don't like the border wall, But you know what? If I have to give the border wall in order to get 1,500 more Border Patrol agents, to get more money to prosecute transnational gangs and do those things, I'm willing to do that because that's what a president does. They don't get 100% of what they want, they compromise. If she said that, she doesn't have to abandon the fact that she doesn't think the wall is the best idea. But if it's divided government, she knows that she's got to tell people, I'm willing to work with others. If she does that,
All right.
I think she wins.